and sharing my screen. And before we get started today, I wanted to show you, whoops, let's go back here. A couple of changes that I made in Blackboard. Over here, submit work here, that's where you're going to put that work in. And before I forget, I apologize doing this during class times, but let me make sure that there's no option that you can only submit it once. So you should be able to just go through and submit it again. If you can't, please let me know. So I wanted you to see that over here in notes. Last class, we didn't have any written word, but where is the link to the YouTube? Did I forget to record your last class? Well, the link for the YouTube will be in here. But what I did want to show you is what I added over here on the side. Some of the people in my other classes were asking about office hours. And so I added a link here for my office hour that will take you right to into the Zoom room for the office hour. And the times are listed there. Again, if you want to try to meet with me sometime other than those posted times, just send me an email and I'll work with you. And again, you try to submit that work, and if the submission doesn't come in, let me know. And I apologize. People have been telling me that it sounds clearer when I use the microphone. Let me add that. And then let's start looking at notes. Again, that first homework is due on the 27th, which is next Wednesday. And it'll be on what we're talking about today and Monday. First unit that we work up, and I apologize. Again, I forgot. Does anybody have any questions about anything before we begin?
Your camera is facing upwards, so we can't see you.
Can you see my screen?
I can see your shared screen, but we just can't see your face.
In order for me to write on it, I have to lay it flat. And,
okay.
And so you are going to have a lovely view of, and you can see the cracks. We live in an old house with plaster ceilings. So I apologize for that. Now I think you can see the top of my sorry old head.
Yeah.
In order for me to write on it, my writing is much better if I have it lay flat. So I figured probably having the notes legible is more important than looking at my sad old face. So.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So first unit that we work with deals with sets. And has anybody heard that word set before in a math class?
Yes.
Yes. Can you think of a way of defining or describing a set? Anybody?
Like a set of integers, I guess.
We can have a set of integers. Great, that's a great example of a set. And we're going to talk about that set a little bit later. But we can also have a set of dishes, right? When you go shopping, you can have a set of silverware. You can have a set of all sorts of things. We're going to define a set as a well-defined collection of objects. And some of that first homework assignment, it looks ridiculously long, but you're going to find there's a lot of short answer questions in there that you should be able to go through relatively quickly. So a set is a well-defined collection of objects, and some of those first homework questions just deal with that definition. When we talk about a set as a well-defined collection of objects, they're usually named with an uppercase letter. So I'm sure that in a math class, you're more used to seeing a set of numbers, but we're going to be looking at all sorts of different sets, not just number sets. So for my first example, I'm going to say that S is the set of students in class today. And is everybody all right that would be a well-defined collection of objects. I could go to gallery view and we could all see the group of everybody who's here in class today. You'd all get the same list, I hope.
Yeah.
What if I say that A is the set of letters in the alphabet? Are we all in agreement that we'd come up with that same listing of letters, that same set?
Yeah.
How about this next one? Let's say H is the set of, let's say the 5 best hockey players of all time. Is that well defined? If I asked you to list the 5 best hockey players of all time, would everybody come up with the same list?
No.
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 I'm not a hockey fan, but I use this example because I live in a house full of hockey fans. Well, the kids are up and grown, but whatever. If I asked one of my daughters for the 5 best hockey players of all time, she'd have to see pictures. She would base it on what they looked like. If I asked my son, they'd all be goalies because he thinks the goalie is the most important position. If I asked my husband, it would all be players from back in the 60s when he was a kid because he thought the sport was better then. And so that's not well defined. Is everybody clear on that?
Yes.
Yes.
And so you're going to find questions that ask you things like that. Instead, what if I said H is the set of hockey players in the Hall of Fame? Would that be well defined?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell I could list them because I'm not a big hockey fan. But there is an official list somewhere up there in Toronto. And once they open the border, we could all go up and see it. Yes. So first set of questions on the homework, I'm going to ask you whether sets are well defined or not. Next definition that we need is element. And an element is an object in the set. And so, for example, I could say that B is an element of that set A that we had previously defined as the alphabet. A, L, P, H, A, B, E, T. Isn't it horrible when you're in front of a group of people and you're writing a word and all of a sudden you forget how to spell it? Oh boy. And are we all in agreement that B is a letter of the alphabet? So it would be in that set.
Yeah.
I have this theory that mathematicians are intrinsically lazy, don't like to write, and are sometimes, like me, spelling challenged. So we're going to find that a lot of these things are called concept-wise, but there's a lot of symbols, there's a lot of notation. And you're going to see a symbol that looks like this. And when I look at that symbol, I sort of see it as a bizarre looking E. And the fact that it sort of looks like an E reminds me that that's the symbol for element of. And so for those lazy math people, that sentence that I wrote above, I'd write B is an element of A. What's important when you use this symbol is what's in front of the symbol has to be the element, and what's behind the symbol has to be the set. And so if I look at another example, again, I don't know that much about hockey, But one name that I do recognize because it was all over the place, it might be a little bit old for you guys. Have you guys ever heard of Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the one hockey player that everybody heard of because he was like one of the best of all times. So we could say that Gretzky was an element of that set H that we defined as people in the Hall of Fame. Yes. What about, okay, so my son always loved hockey, but never could play. And his name is Kevin. So is Kevin Torella in the Hockey Hall of Fame? I don't think so. And don't let him see me do this. I don't want to dash his hopes, although he's a little old for that now. You sometimes see that symbol with a slash through it. And is it obvious to everybody that that would mean not an element?
Yeah.
And so another example, we might say something like 8 is not an element of the alphabet. It's not one of those letters. And again, that set A is what we had defined before as the alphabet. So far, okay. A set is a well-defined collection of objects, and that funny looking E means element. Everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
Great. Then I'm going to add a page because otherwise this becomes quite a run-on document. Next page, we're going to look at ways we can list a set. So we're going to say that a set can be given in 3 ways. First way is what we've been doing by description. So one more example that we're going to beat to death here. We could say D is the set of days of the week. And hopefully, when I say the set of days of the week, everybody would come up with those same 7 elements. And that's a pretty well-defined set. Sometimes, so rather than describing a set, we give it by roster. And when I look at that word roster, well, where I've heard the word roster used before, has anybody ever been on a sports team or a club or something and you get a roster? Or you go to a sporting event, back when you could go to a sporting event and you buy a program and it gives you the roster. And what's that roster? It's a list of everybody on the team, yes? And so that's what it means to list, give a set by roster. It's listing all of the elements. So it's a list of all the elements in the set. But we have to put some rules here on how we're going to list those elements. First, we're going to put the elements in braces. And braces, could everybody mute unless you're talking to the background noise right now? Thank you. When we put in braces, if you use they should show up in the toolbar in my labs. Otherwise, there should be on your keyboard, there should be braces. Braces are those funny looking parentheses. They kind of look like they have a nose in the middle. When I was a child, I was taught that they kind of looked like almost an odd profile or something like that. Realize that braces aren't parentheses. Don't just draw me parentheses. But as you can look at the ones that I drew, I'm not taking off for artistic merit. They just have to kind of be squiggly looking parentheses when something's handwritten. Another thing that's important is that you put a comma between the elements. In that list, we want a comma in between each one. Usually when we're talking about a set in roster, order does not matter. But I'm going to put a little asterisk there. If you were to come up with a set of numbers, let's say 1, 2, 3, it should be perfectly fine if instead you decided you wanted to put them in 2, 1, 3 or 3, 2, 1 or any other order. But please, when you're doing the homework online, pay attention to the directions. Sometimes when you after you fill in that little box, you'll see fine print underneath that says list them in order. And if the directions tell you to put them in order and you don't, you won't receive full credit. But most normally, order does not matter. And the other thing that's important is you don't repeat elements. If something's in the set, it's in the set. There's no need to put the same element in there twice. So let's look at some examples of sets by roster. First, let's look at that set D that we had previously defined. We had said that D was going to be the set of days of the week. And so by roster, that would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so we've listed the days of the week. And does everybody see how that list is equivalent to that description we had given before? Another example, I could have C be the set C, A, T with commas in between. And does everybody see that this set has 3 elements, which are letters? As opposed to if I have P be the set PIG without commas in between. And without commas in between, does everybody see that this set contains one word? Pig. And so I like to use examples like that to show you the importance of those commas. Make sense?
Yeah.
Let's lastly say that L is the set of letters in the word letter. And if I wanted to show L by roster, what letters are in the word letter? We've got L, we've got E, we've got T. There's a second T in the word letter, but does everybody see that T is in that set already? So when I say I don't repeat, it means I'm not going to write a second T. That's in the set already. Likewise, I'm not going to write a second E, but I do have to add that R. And do you see what I mean by don't repeat elements? Each letter only gets listed once.
What about the S?
Well, I'm saying it's letters in the word, just letter.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No worries. A good question. And then if that's all right, before we look at the third way of listing elements in a set, there are a couple of number sets that we need to be familiar with. Is everybody got this? Is it okay if I change the page?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then important number sets. And there's a whole bunch of important number sets. We're only going to look at, I was going to look at 2, but I guess we'll add a third one. The first one is an uppercase N. And you're going to find that most of the times when you see the uppercase N, it's going to represent this set, which is the set of natural numbers. And that's how Mr. Blitzer, the author of your book, refers to them. Sometimes you also see them called counting numbers. And I like that idea of counting numbers because it makes me think of when you have a small child and they're learning how to count. When you learn how to count, don't just start counting with 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as much fun as it is listing those numbers, if we wanted to, we could spend the rest of our lives doing so. Is everybody familiar with those 3 dots?
Meaning continuation.
Continues forever and ever, if need be. So dot, dot, dot. That's called, if anybody's interested, the fancy name for that is an ellipsis. And just an aside, a story. I had always seen that word ellipsis used with sets and the 3 dots in math classes. I was surprised it might have been about a year ago, I was listening to a story on the radio about some important government document that was being released, and they had some statements redacted, where they don't take parts out because it's highly classified. And I was listening to the radio and they said that the document was full of ellipses, meaning that, the missing spaces were filled in with dot, dot, dot. And I was surprised because that was the first time I heard that word used in that context. So that dot, dot, dot isn't just called ellipses in math, but in other circles too. So another example using an ellipsis, let's say that E is the set of numbers from 1 to 100. And so I could start listing them by roster, 1, 2, 3, but then I'm getting tired. And sometimes you use the ellipsis not to show that it goes on forever, but there's a whole bunch in between. And so I might have 1, 2, 3, dot, dot, 99, 100. And not gonna lie, I was a stay-at-home mom for way too long. And whenever I write that, it makes me think of, did anybody ever hear that joke when a little kid is first learning to count? They say, oh, I can count from 1 to 100. And they go 1, 2, skip a few, 99, 100. Has anybody ever heard that one? When I see that ellipsis in the middle of a list, I hear kids saying that. But the ellipsis and the natural numbers, is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Next one then is the set W, and the set W is the set of whole numbers. And this one's interesting because there really isn't a big difference between the natural numbers and the whole numbers. Can anybody remember learning in a past life, in the past place in your mathematical career, the difference between the whole numbers and the natural numbers?
Don't whole numbers include the number 0?
Yep, numbers include the number 0. Great, and that is the only difference. 0, 1, 2, 3, dot, dot, dot. They keep on going. And if anybody wants a silly memory aid, if I look at the spelling of the word whole, H-O-L-E, if I asked you to draw a hole in your paper, wouldn't you draw a circle, which looks like a 0? And so I remember the first time I learned about the difference between whole numbers and natural numbers. A teacher told me to just draw a hole at the beginning of the list, and that'll give you the whole numbers. So, and the third one that I wasn't going to do, because we're not going to necessarily make use of in class, but somebody had mentioned it before. So let's go through and look at Z, which is the set of integers. And that set of integers, what we add to it is a dot, dot, dot in the front, because the integers include the natural numbers, 0, and the opposites or the negatives of the natural numbers. So what's probably most important for the context of this class is that you remember that if you see that n, it means we're restricting our thoughts to natural numbers. Everybody all right with that?
Yeah.
If so, I want to turn the page and look at that third way of giving a set. And that third way of giving a set is something that's called, whoops, apologize, set builder notation. And usually in most instances in a math setting, when we're talking about number sets, set builder notation is used when your set is too big to list. When your set is too big to list, even with an ellipsis. Mr. Blitzer, though, uses that idea of set builder notation for all sorts of sets. We use when we use set builder notation, we use a variable to represent the elements of the set. There's a specific way that set builder notation is written. It starts with braces, and that we read as the set of all. And then the first thing that's in there is a variable. And then after there, in your textbook, they use a bar. Sometimes in other resources, rather than a bar, they use a colon. But that's read as such that. And then what follows is a description of what the variable represents. And then you close it with your braces. So I'm guessing that that's about as clear as mud. So let's look at an example. And one of those examples, like what you might see in the homework with Mr. Blitzer's book, we had talked about D being the days of the week. In set builder notation, we'd say that D is the set of, and then we'll put a variable. I guess I'm going to use a lowercase d, such that D is a day of the week. I could say M is the set of all. I'm going to use a lowercase m, such that M is a month of the year. And in the homework, you might see a set builder notation like that. And then they might ask you to list that set by roster. And so there, the months of the year would be January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. It's just another way of giving a set using that set notation, that set builder notation. when we look at number sets with set builder notation, one thing that you need to sort of be familiar with are symbols of inequality. And I'm going to just list them. And I'm keeping my fingers and toes crossed that they're familiar to all of you. And you folks can help me explain what they are. There's this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Has everybody seen those 4 symbols before?
Yes.
Yes. Can anybody remember this one? It kind of sort of looks like a bizarre L, doesn't it?
Less than.
Beautiful, less than. So then this next one must be
Greater than.
greater than. And then this next one sort of looks like the less than, but it's got an equal at the bottom. So that's less than or equal to. And is everybody all right? The difference between those symbols would just be one value, and it could be equal to whatever your endpoint is. And this one would be
Yeah.
greater or equal to. And so another example of set builder notation, I'm going to say S is the set of all X such that X is less than or equal to 50. But then I want to add something at the back. What I'm going to add is this. And as we go through and read that, we're saying S is the set of all X such that X is less than or equal. But what's this thing at the back saying? X is an element of the natural numbers. So we're saying that X is a natural number. And I know some people, the first time I write something like that at the back of a set builder notation, look at it and they're overwhelmed because of the numbers of symbols in there. But I want to tell you, putting that part there is good. Putting that part there, I say that part is my friend, because to say it's a natural number tells me, first of all, the smallest value is 1. So I don't have to worry about all of those negatives and everything else that's smaller than 50. And it also tells me that I'm thinking about my natural numbers. So I don't have to think about all of those crazy fractions and decimals and irrational numbers in between them. I'm just thinking about my counting numbers less than 50. So that would be 1, 2, 3, and then we can put our ellipsis 49, 50. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So on the test quiz homework, you might see something like T is the set of all Y such that, let's say, 3 is less than Y is less than or equal to 9, and Y is a natural number. And I might ask you to list it by Foster. And so, first of all, am I going too fast or is everybody okay?
I'm good.
So over here, to say that Y is an element of natural numbers means, again, we don't have to worry about negatives or fractions. Now, here,
breaking up. Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. It it's stuck. Whoa. Mhm. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It starts with 3, but can y equal 3?
No.
No. So the first number will be 4. You want numbers bigger than 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then this part tells me I'm stopping at 9. Do I include the 9? Can y equal 9?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what that set would look like by roster. Everybody all right with that one?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then one more. Let's say V is the set of all such that n is greater than 100 and n is a natural number. What would this one look like by roster? And what number is bigger than 100? I'm not including 100, so we'll start with 101.
1.
And does it ever stop? If we don't-
No.
No, so we'll put our ellipses there. Is everybody okay if I turn the page?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to look at another example. And this is kind of more like one of the examples that you might see in the homework. Let's say that H is equal to the set of all H such that H is a woman who was president of the United States. We want to list that set by roster. So can anybody name for me the first woman who's president of the United States?
No.
No.
There hasn't been one yet, but there's a vice president who's a woman.
Good.
Who's
No,
the first?
no. Is everybody
Yeah.
else? There's nothing in that set. And that's an example of what we're going to define as an empty set. An empty set has no elements. An empty set is also referred to as the null set. The null set is the empty set. And when I look at notation, there's 2 ways of writing it. I guess the most obvious is the braces with nothing in there. Is everybody real clear that that shows a set with nothing in it? It's an empty set.
Yeah.
The other way, has anybody seen the 0 with a the 0 with a slash?
Did she leave?
I think she left.
Oh, we lost her.
Well, Karen's the host. Karina, I think.
It's still recording though.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's still recording. Mhm.
Wait, am I the host?
Yeah, it's showing on our end.
Oh, should I stop recording then?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah. You can go ahead, I guess, and stop recording.
All right.